The fiasco, streets on fire. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Juan?
Well, tonight, Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri will host a first and only vice presidential debate between Alaska Governor Sarah Palin and Delaware Senator Joseph Biden. The debate will be moderated by Gwen Ifill of PBS. Senator McCain and Governor Palin have been sowing doubts about how fair Ifill will be because of a book she's writing that's called Breakthrough: Politics and Race in the Age of Obama. The McCain campaign and right-wing pundits allege that Ifill might be biased in favor of Senator Obama. What's missing, however, is any concern about the fairness of the very structure of the debate. The Obama and McCain campaigns jointly negotiated a detailed contract dictating the terms of all the 2008 debates. This includes who gets to participate as well as the topics raised during the debates. But the contract remains a secret, and the Commission on Presidential Debates, a private corporation created by the two major parties, has refused to release the contract to the public.
Open Debates is a nonprofit committed to democratizing the presidential debate process. Last month, Open Debates and 9 other pro-democracy groups called on the Commission to make the contract public. George Farah is the founder and executive director of Open Debates, author of No Debate: How the Republican and Democratic Parties Secretly Control the Presidential Debates, joining us from Washington, D.C. So, George, well, what are these rules tonight? What will they abide by, and who is making them?
Unfortunately, Amy, we don't know the extent of the rules precisely because the Obama and McCain campaigns have absolutely refused to release the detailed contract that dictates the terms of tonight's debate. We only have limited knowledge. With respect to the rules that we do know about, because the campaigns are terrified that both Biden and Palin will make a major gaffe during tonight's performance, they've severely restricted the response times, so each candidate only has 90 seconds to respond to a particular question, and then only 2 minutes afterwards to have some sort of discussion. This is in sharp contrast to the amount of time that was given to Obama and McCain during their debate. And of course, Amy, you're not going to see any third-party voices in tonight's debate. The Republican Democratic parties, who exert near absolute control over these public forums, have determined and made sure that no third-party voices are ever seen on the debate stage and can challenge their dominance of our political system.
Well, walk us through how we got to this stage. Who originally was sponsoring these debates years back, and how this secretive nonprofit organization gained control of them?
We used to have a fantastic, genuinely nonpartisan presidential debate sponsor, the League of Women Voters. From 1976 until 1984, the League of Women Voters hosted our most important public forums, and they made sure the debates served the public interest rather than the interest of any political party, and they had the guts to stand up to the two major parties. In 1980, for example, former Republican Congressman John Anderson ran as an independent for the President of the United States. President Jimmy Carter adamantly refused to debate him, but the League said, you know what, Mr. President, too bad, and they hosted a presidential debate between Ronald Reagan and John Anderson that was watched by over 40 million people. Fast forward 4 years later, the Walter Mondale and Ronald Reagan campaigns actually vetoed 68 of the moderators that the League of Women Voters had proposed for the 3 debates. What did the League do? They issued a scathing public press release castigating the candidates for abusing the process, and the Reagan and Mondale campaigns were forced to accept aggressive moderators. Again, 4 years later, the League of Women Voters were refusing to implement any contract that was negotiated by the George Bush and Dukakis campaigns. They had negotiated the first secret contract, a 12-page memorandum of understanding that dictated who would participate and how the format would be structured. The League said,
you
this
mean
is an outrage.
that was longer than the initial proposal for the $700 billion bailout?
9 pages longer. And they absolutely refused to implement the contract. Well, guess what? The parties did not like the fact that an uppity women's organization, pro-democracy, was telling their boys who could participate in their debates and under what condition. And so in 1987, they created this private corporation called the Commission on Presidential Debates. It sounds like a government agency. It's not. And every 4 years, it awards absolute control to the Republican and Democratic parties over our political forums.
And who sponsors this organization?
Well, that makes things even worse. Unfortunately, much of the money that finances the presidential debates that are hosted by the Commission on Presidential Debates are private corporations that have regulatory interest before Congress. Anheuser-Busch has spent the most money of any company in the United States on presidential debates, which is partly why every 4 years we get a debate in St. Louis, and we don't have a debate this year in New Orleans, which is dying for a debate, and massive civic groups were demanding the debate be held there to highlight some of Katrina's problems. another consequence of corporate sponsorship is that the corporations are able to give a contribution this way to both parties. You know, we have limitations in this country. Corporations can't give direct contributions to the candidates. Well, the commission provides an end runaround. When a corporation gives money to the Commission on Presidential Debates, it knows it is giving money to both the Republican and Democratic parties, supporting their duopoly over our political process and excluding third-party voices that may be hostile to corporate power. And all four third-party candidates that are on ballots this year are sharply critical of growing corporate power.
Who are the co-chairs of the commission?
Well, you've got Frank Fahrenkopf and Paul Kirk. These guys have run this presidential debate process for 20 years. They first incorporated in 1988. At the time, Amy, they were the heads of the Republican and Democratic parties, and they still run our presidential debates. And it shouldn't be surprising that these guys are willing to sacrifice the integrity of the political process to serve partisan or private interest because they're registered lobbyists. Paul Kirk has lobbied on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry, and Frank Fahrenkopf is the nation's leading gambling lobbyist. He is the president of the American Gaming Association. These are the guys deciding who gets to participate in the most important political forums in the United States of America.
But now, there have been occasions when a third-party candidate did get in. Obviously, Ross Perot managed to get in some of the debates back in '92. Now, what have they been doing in terms of that?
Well, Juan, in 1992, the only reason Ross Perot got in the presidential debates is because the candidates refused to exclude him. And that's it. If the candidates had wanted him out, if Bill Clinton had wanted him out, he would have been out. 4 years later, though, when Ross Perot ran again, he was polling exactly the amount he was polling prior to the debates in 1992. He was polling at 9%. He had $36 million in taxpayer funds, and yet he was excluded. Why? Because behind closed doors, Bill Clinton and Bob Dole struck a deal. Bill Clinton agreed to exclude Perot as long as Bob Dole agreed that there would be only 2 debates instead of 3 debates, that they would abolish follow-up questions, and that they would schedule those debates opposite the World Series. Bill Clinton was winning by about 20 points in the polls, and he didn't want anyone watching these debates or any difficult questions challenging his authority. And that's exactly what happened. Perot was excluded despite $35 million in taxpayer funds. The debates were held opposite the World Series, resulting in lower viewership ever. No follow-up questions, only 2 debates, and the American people had no idea because the Commission on Presidential Debates secretly implemented the contract and took all the flack.
I want to look at how the 2 major party presidential nominees talk about the financial crisis and the Treasury's $700 billion bailout, and how the third-party candidates address the issue. Let's begin with an excerpt from the first presidential debate last Friday between Senator McCain and Senator Obama.
Number one, we've got to make sure that we've got oversight over this whole process. $700 billion potentially is a lot of money. Number two, we've got to make sure that taxpayers, when they are putting their money at risk, have the possibility of getting that money back and gains if the market and when the market returns.
We have finally seen Republicans and Democrats sitting down and negotiating together and coming up with a package. This package has transparency in it, options for loans to failing businesses rather than the government taking over those loans. It has to have a package with a number of other essential elements to it.
So the 2 major presidential party candidates agree on the bailout. Now let's listen to some of the other presidential candidates who were not included in Friday's debate, what they had to say.